N asks, why are so many people against Israel and pro-Palestine? What are the common arguments and why should they reconsider? Parentheses, I know you are pro-Israel. One of the big reasons is because the media is constantly lying to them. So you can look at it as, why is the media anti-Israel? And then why are people like gullible and just believe what the media tells them? Because the media tells them things like Israel genocides people. Israel destroys Palestinian homes because they're bullies. Israel is a racist apartheid religious state. You know, if the media is telling you that, then a lot of people are going to be anti-Israel because they believed what the media said. And if you believe claims like those, of course you're going to be anti-Israel. Now, the more reasonable people will also know that, Palestinians do terrorism, so they'll be kind of mixed and say both sides are bad. And that's pretty common. And one of the reasons that people sort of seem anti-Israel when they're mixed. Why do people seem so anti-Israel when they're mixed? Is because they get in debates. Like, there's not a lot of people saying the Palestinians never did anything wrong. So they don't get someone going, no, they did terrorism. That was something wrong. But you do get people saying, hey, Israel didn't do anything wrong. I'm pro-Israel. I'm on the side of Israel. I think they're in the right. People like me say that. So that gets the mixed people to argue with us and say, oh, what are you talking about? Israel did all these things wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that they are totally pro-Palestinian. Plenty of the people who will argue with a Israel is right guy are mixed themselves. But then they appear like anti-Israel, especially because that's the thing they're like triggered by to argue against. They're still wrong. Like there's an error there, but it's not as bad as just like strictly taking the side of the Palestinians. So it's sort of like the everything is gray and both sides did a lot of things wrong camp versus the Israel is good camp. Those are like the main camps. And Palestinians are great and terrorism is fine is not so popular. Like that's not very mainstream among like actual Westerners. Like there's certain escalations, especially from some of the political elites, where they want to like show how progressive they are or whatever. So they advocate like sanctions against Israel and there's a double standard. And they don't advocate sanctions against Palestine in the same way. So that's really bad. And then a lot of people will follow along in that. But that doesn't mean most of them are actually pro-terrorism. If you could actually get like an unbiased answer when they're not being triggered. Just because they'll like defend and excuse the terrorism doesn't mean they necessarily think it's a good idea. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. Anyway, that was kind of tangential. So yeah, the media lies to them. It literally lies sometimes. A lot of the time it's very, very misleading on purpose. Selective reporting, using ambiguous language to imply things that are false, but they don't quite literally say it. There's a lot of that as well. Good sources for learning more about this are anything by Caroline Glick. You can also find some stuff in general on Front Page Mag and on the Jihad Watch site, and sometimes Pamela Geller has stuff. But I would look first at Caroline Glick. There are also some sites like Camera and Memory, which are good. Memory does translation, so you can see what some of the things that the Arabs say in their own language are. Another good thing to look up is called Pallywood, and you can find how the Palestinians trick the media, except that the media like ought to know better and they're pretty complicit. But you can see them like setting up fake footage where they'll like, get an ambulance and get a dead body and pretend to make a scene and get it filmed. They make fake scenes just like a movie. They literally do that. They've been caught repeatedly. If you look up Pallywood, you will find some examples and documentation and stuff. It's Pallywood. It's like combining Palestinian with Hollywood. So most people don't know that. The media doesn't tell them that. The media instead films some of the fake scenes and lets it go. You see some of the same stuff at the U.S.-Mexico border. I've seen photos of people like running around and pretending to be oppressed and whatever, and then people taking photos of it and videoing it and stuff. While like right next to them, people are just sitting down and like chilling. And they're acting and they're doing scenes on camera to make things that will get them clicks for the media and advance an agenda. Because there are certain people with an anti-Israel agenda who have some level of power and influence in the media and stuff like that. And they have been spreading it for a long time. Why would they do that? I think a lot of it is very similar to why they are also anti-American, and they've been attacking Trump and attacking Ronald Reagan and attacking the heartland, or the quote flyover states, and attacking Christians in the US, and calling us a bunch of like white supremacists and racists and xenophobes. Like the same kind of rhetoric you got from Hillary Clinton, I think motivates like an anti-civilization attitude, or comes from that attitude. There are people who dislike Western civilization, including George Soros, who funds a lot of media stuff. You see it with environmentalism as well. There are some well-intentioned environmentalists, especially at the lower levels, who are less involved and know less about it. But a lot of the people in charge of that stuff are not well-intentioned. They are trying to turn out the lights in the West, and they write about it openly. They want us to stop using cars and oil and so on. And some of them openly advocate, more people should do manual labor and do farming with manual labor. And they say stuff like that. They say we should be more like Cuba. There are people who think that way. They just hate a progressive civilization. They call themselves progressive, but progress is what they hate. It's technology, it's morality, it's capitalism, it's all that stuff. They don't like it. And Israel, like America, is a symbol of progress and modernity and stuff like that. So while they lie that Israel is backwards and oppressive and so on, it is actually a highly free, diverse democracy, which has high standards for how they deal with people, how their police function, how their army functions, and so on. The Israeli military is under more of a spotlight and is more careful than any other military in the world. They are more careful with collateral damage than the US military. If you actually research the facts and look at how they make decisions, how they control what their soldiers do, what their policies are, what missions they will abort to avoid collateral damage, even though they need to kill someone or blow something up or whatever. If you look into that carefully, they're more careful than the US or any other country. And that's part of why they're hated, because they're civilized, and there are people in the world who are anti-civilization. And then they have a lot of dupes who aren't very good at thinking and just are impressed by sound bites and whatever, which is very similar to how the Democrats get votes. Just a bunch of dupes and sheeple and NPCs and whatever, who are getting fooled by the media and don't do enough to look into things themselves. Like, I saw something the other day, I think it was from Veritas. They were saying that they had like some Google executive or something, and he was saying, like, in the next election, they could swing 15 million votes. Or maybe it was someone mad at Google who was fearful Google would swing 15 million votes. And Google cannot swing your vote unless you're a bit of an NPC, unless you're just not really taking initiative and looking into things. Google can make it a bit harder to find information. They can make different things pop up on certain searches. But if you dig a bit deeper and add more search terms and whatever, you can find most of the stuff they're hiding. You can find alternative information if you really want to, and you just keep looking until you find it. It's definitely there. What Google does today, in general, is make certain information a little easier to find and certain information a little harder to find. And if that is enough to control your political opinions, you are not an independent thinker. And it's the same with a lot of voters. Not independent thinkers get influenced heavily by some stupid sound bites and what the media says over and over with their talking heads on TV. And so people get told a lot of things: to hate Israel, to hate Trump, to hate capitalism, that the police are racist, and so on and so forth. None of the actual accusations against Israel are very important. They're a bunch of lies. They have no real merit. There are constant double standards where other countries are actually doing far more of it and no one cares, or just doing it at all when Israel isn't and no one cares. People would not apply those standards consistently to every country. They don't actually want the US military to have a absolutely zero collateral damage policy. That would be unreasonable. It would prevent us from waging war. And it's not something they actually are interested in. They're just looking for leverage to attack Israel. It's throw a bunch of arguments at the wall and see what impresses the rubes, and then keep repeating that. Find some narratives that work on some people and say them a bunch. This, of course, is Western anti-Semitism, or anti-Israel or whatever, but they're very connected. It's the Jewish state. There's no way to actually separate it. And why would people be so biased about Israel in particular? What features of Israel are causing that bias? It's not the atrocities they didn't commit. So it must be something else. And when you talk to these people, they frequently mention the Jews and stuff like that. It's part of the talking points and stuff. They don't just ignore the fact that Israel is a Jewish state. Anyway, if Israel hasn't done anything wrong, you have to look at why they're targeted. And you have to suspect Jewishness has something to do with it, like it always has. And there's other aspects. There's an alliance between Islam and the left, similar to Hitler allied with Islam to some extent. There's some Islam-Marxism alliance or connection. To some extent, it's just all the bad guys team up against the good guys because they hate the good guys more and they see the good guys as more of a threat and so on. It's kind of amazing, though, how the left will behave. Because, Islamic countries are homophobic. They will, stone, kill, and jail homosexuals. That's, happening today in some of the Islamic countries. And they're super sexist against women. You can go look up examples about how Saudi Arabia or whatever treats women. And the left will take their side anyways because they see Islam in general as victims, as incompetent children who are not real actors. And whenever anything bad happens to them, they look to blame the people who matter, the civilization. So that's a fucked up perspective. But it shows how much certain people are looking to ally with Islam that they will overlook homophobia and whatever else. It shows that issues like homophobia are decoys used to attack Western civilization. It's not that they actually care about homophobia, it's just that they're looking for leverage points to undermine Western civilization, to splinter it into groups, to rally people for activism causes, and so on and so forth. So they use Israel and BDS a lot like they use protecting homosexuals or disability rights or gun control or whatever else. They don't actually care. So in their own words, the words of Saul Alinsky, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. The issue is always power. That is what he taught in Rules for Radicals to disciples such as Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. The issue doesn't matter. Just lie about it, take whatever side is popular. All that matters is gaining power so that you can implement the revolution and get your way on all the issues later. So they just look for anything they can say with no integrity. As far as Islamic anti-Semites, there's a long history in the world of looking for scapegoats, and there are various explanations. But suffice it to say that they indoctrinate their young children in school with atrocious lies. And it is a very fucked up culture that we really need to be careful about letting into our country. So more questions about this are welcome, but that's enough for now. And also for references, just search on Google for site:curie.us and then type Israel. And search for Caroline Glick. And if you go on Front Page Magazine, there's like a pamphlet about Israel, I think, that's good, by David Horowitz or something. Glick has columns and also a book called The One State Solution for Peace or something like that. Oh yes, so the pamphlet by David Horowitz is called Why Israel is the Victim. If you search for David Horowitz Israel pamphlet, you'll find it. I'm sure the title will work and other things. So you can read that on Front Page Magazine. And also, yeah, if you want to look up Saul Alinsky to understand the left better, go to discoverthenetworks.org and search for Saul Alinsky. And you can find out what type of people are trying to run the left and control all the sheeple. Another thing you can do if you want is if you find a specific factual claim that you think damns Israel, you could post about that on one of my forums and see what people say. But try to make it like very specific, have documentation, and focus on facts, not, and be careful about sources, not, a local Palestinian said, but like see if you can find something that's actually documented instead of just a story someone made up, because you cannot trust the Palestinians as eyewitnesses.